I am in the Historic Centre of Vienna, Austria on the Stephansplatz. And this is the Stephansdom. This magnificent and towering cathedral was built in the mid-13th century and has a fantastic colored roof blanketed by 230,000 glazed tiles. The Stephansdom does have an admission charge to fully enter, and I was extremely limited on time, so I opted not to go inside. The crypt below the Stephansdom is also apparently quite interesting. It's basically a catacombs containing the skeletal remains of over 11,000 people. During the 1735 bubonic plague outbreak, surrounding cemeteries were emptied and all the bones were piled into the crypt. Prince Eugene of Savoy is also entombed inside this mighty cathedral. I probably would have made time for it and paid to go inside if they allowed photography in the crypt, but unfortunately they do not. The catacombs in Paris do not choose to make an issue of it, so hopefully they will change their policy at the Stephansdom. One rather interesting landmark near the Stephansplatz is the Plague Column. This wonderful gilded Baroque column commemorates the city's survival of the Black Death. The bubonic plague hit Vienna hard several times, but it really brought the city to its knees in the late 17th century. Vienna was of course a very important crossroads for trade, so outbreaks of the plague were severe here in the 14th, 17th, and even 18th centuries. During the Great Plague of the 17th century, the Black Death killed somewhere between 12,000 to 75,000 people here in the city of less than 150,000 inhabitants. So it may have killed half the population. After the city survived that most severe epidemic, the Habsburgs erected the 69-foot tall Baroque tower in 1693. The figures at the base represent the triumph of faith over the disease, while a likeness of Kaiser Leopold I prays it away, though of course he did flee the city during the epidemic. That is the Peterskirche, a fantastic Baroque church that was completed in 1733. It was the first dome church in Vienna, and it was inspired by St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. There was a mass going on inside, so I couldn't really explore, but I did get a few clips of the fantastic interior. I have now arrived at the Judenplatz, the center of a historically Jewish neighborhood here in Vienna. There is now a unique Holocaust memorial that stands on this square. There was once a synagogue and Jewish school at this site. However, in the 1420s, the Jews of Vienna were arrested and expelled in the Gesara. Some Jews held out, and they were besieged at the synagogue here until they collectively committed suicide. The ruins of that synagogue still exist directly below this Holocaust memorial to the Austrian Jews. This unusual mausoleum-like memorial was designed by the British artist Rachel Whitehead and was unveiled in 2000. This memorial is known as the Nameless Library. For one, because Jews are people of the book, so the walls are designed to indicate bookcases turned inside out, with the spines of the books facing inwards and not visible. Therefore, the names of the books are unknown. Texturally, they are all identical, indicating the vast number of Holocaust victims from Austria. The sealed doors of the memorial are also interesting. Notice that there are no handles, but there are flowers in their place. The base of the memorial is engraved all around. In the center it states, in commemoration of more than 65,000 Austrian Jews who were killed by the Nazis between 1938 and 1945. The names of concentration camps and other places where Austrian Jews were murdered surround the perimeter of the memorial. This is a totally different memorial from anything I've ever seen. In the words of Austrian Holocaust survivor Simon Wiesenthal, who spearheaded the creation of the Judenplatz, this monument should not be beautiful, it must hurt. There's also a statue of the German philosopher Gotthold Lessing on the Judenplatz. The original sculpture from 1931 was removed by the Nazis and melted down to make weaponry. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart lived at a house on this site in 1783. Unfortunately, that building was replaced, but I do know there are several places that Mozart lived that still stand here in Vienna. That is the Uhren Museum, a clock museum that I would have loved to have visited, but did not have time. We have now entered the heart of the Imperial City at the Kellerplatz. This is just one side of the Habsburg's colossal Hofburg complex. This section of the palace is now home to the Sissi Museum, displaying the imperial family's fancy porcelain and silver. There are actually ancient Roman ruins in the center of the square. These are some excavated remains of Roman Vindobona. That building houses the State Hall of the Austrian National Library, which I did visit and have a separate video on. It's awesome. That's a green bunny on top of the famed Bitzinger sausage stand. And this is the Volksoper, the Great Vienna State Opera House. It was built in 1869 as the first major building on the new Ringstrasse, the ring road that took the place of the city's medieval walls. The interior of this opera house is supposedly beautiful, and many important people have performed here, such as Gustav Mahler. I am actually going to see an opera here in Vienna, but not here at the State Opera. I'm going to have to use the U-Bahn to get to the opera house that I'm going to. The Vienna U-Bahn network is quite good and easy to use. There are currently 5 lines that connect the city. Although they're not always underground, many are overground. Also, as is often the case with public transport in Austria and Germany, there are no ticket scanners to use the U-Bahn. It technically goes on an honor system, but you still have to pay for tickets. You don't want to get caught without one. I have arrived at one of the city's classic Otto Wagner designed U-Bahn stations. This is the Volksoper, the Vienna People's Opera House. It's not quite as big as the Staatsoper, but this is an important Vienna institution that puts on hundreds of performances each year. The Volksoper was built in 1898 and designed by the local theater architects Fellner and Helmer. They designed several other theaters here in Vienna, such as the Volkstheater by Parliament, as well as the Academy Theater, and they even designed a really cool private residence here called the Springer Schlossel, which I also got to visit and feature in a separate video. Apart from their work in Vienna, they designed quite a few other theaters around Central Europe. The motifs in this lobby are great. This plaque inside commemorates the 50th anniversary of the reign of Emperor Franz Joseph, who, quote, erected this people's playhouse as a home for German arts. Notice it's German arts, Deutscher Kunst, not Austrian arts. I guess I am seeing an opera by a German composer, so. There's a view over the above ground U-Bahn line. All of that infrastructure was actually designed by Otto Wagner, along with the nearby station, which is really cool. The Staatsoper was bombed during World War II, so throughout the 1950s the Volksoper served as Vienna's premier opera house. I am here to see Der Fliegende Holländer, the Flying Dutchman, an opera by the great Richard Wagner. Heinrich Heine included the legend of the Flying Dutchman in one of his 1830s novels, so supposedly after reading that, and after a stormy sea crossing undertook by Wagner, he wrote this comparatively short opera in the early 1840s. This was still fairly early in his career, and he conducted the premiere in Dresden in 1843. Spoiler alert for this nearly 200-year-old legend, but the story goes that every 7 years, the cursed Flying Dutchman is cast ashore so he can seek redemption through love. He meets a fellow ship captain who is basically willing to sell off his daughter to the Dutchman, so they go to shore and meet his weirdo daughter Senta, who already loves the ghost Dutchman, but the Dutchman gets upset when he sees she has a boyfriend. Then Senta kills herself to prove her devotion, and they both are able to ascend to heaven. It was a good opera production. I had never seen a Wagner before. It was in German, so I didn't understand a word they said, but that wasn't an issue since I knew what was going on. By the way, I should mention since we visited the Judenplatz that Wagner was a horrible anti-Semite, but his operas and music are still fantastic. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please check out my other content, featuring other sites and museums here in Vienna and elsewhere in Europe and America. Also, please like the video, share it, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching!